This isn't our first meeting here. We've had a couple of meetings in the past to sort of gauge some interest around whether natural gas would be of interest in Vergennes, and it's been well received. We've gotten community support letters just supporting the expansion and the introduction of natural gas into the community. And I can also say that we've been meeting with Goodrich as well, which is now UTC Aerospace, and they've been very supportive of the project and have supported our filing and have written letters of support. We had an open house in March of 2012, and we had a number of people from the company just to, talk a little bit about what we do, conversion of equipment and so forth, and then we've continued discussions with this. We recently completed, within the last month or two, a survey, both within Vergennes and Middlebury, to just gauge the interest within the households, whether there's interest in converting over to natural gas, and we were very pleased with the results. And these were just letters that were provided, both from the city as well as Goodrich, supporting the project, and it's really helpful when it comes time for the regulatory process to sort of share some of that support and what the benefits are. Now, closer to home, our general approach to expansion is really kind of a six-step approach. We work very closely with the town on this, and Tim can speak to this in more detail. One of the first things that we do is sit down with the town and go through what would be the permitting. All the gas lines would be put in the town right of way, so we'd sit down with the town and understand what the permitting requirements would be to do that. So we do things like surveying, the permitting process, and then with that in place, we begin an outreach, marketing, sales approach. I'll go into each of these a little bit more detail. Finally, the construction, the conversion, and then at the end, we always try and gauge that customer feedback to improve our process. And just by way of reference point, in the last 6 years, we've expanded to 4 different communities. We started with Jericho back in 2007. We expanded to Underhill in 2008, Heinsberg in 2009, and this last year we went into the town of Richmond. In 2013, we'll be expanding into the town of Enosburg. So we have experience in building out the system. In terms of the preliminary construction, this would be mostly around just engineering design of the roadways and infrastructures, where we see the footprint, where the pipe would go, which side of the road, what other utilities are out there. Those are all things that we want to understand as part of the survey. Working with the town, where would it be best? Of course, one of the challenges here will be the river, and we'll want to work very closely with the town to understand what the best way to do that is. And then ultimately we would present our design to the town, and we'd look to receive a permit for that. And this is a typical, anyone's interested, this is a typical sample design of what would come out of that process. On the marketing side, we try and do it all to get the word out. We do advertising in the local newspapers. We do door knockers, literally going around to homes and businesses and hanging knockers. We'll do direct mails. We'll have, and this has been a real success for us, we'll do open houses where we'll have, I think, practically every department in the company come and sort of explain what their section is, even if it's not related to the project. Explain, different aspects of the company, whether it's, the engineering or the construction, or setting up a meter, or how billing will work, or our energy efficiency programs, and of course our sales and marketing. And it's been a big hit in all the communities that we've gone to. I think in a few weeks we'll be going up to Enosburg and doing a similar open house there. And then finally, we do a lot by way of website too. It's very efficient, so we'll set up a dedicated website, let's say new service in Vergennes, and all the information related to Vergennes will be there, whether it's where the gas service will be in Vergennes, programs to help convert over to natural gas, schedules, where we are in the construction timeline. All of that will be contained in on the website. And then once the sort of the marketing effort is done, we have salespeople that will go out and meet with customers one-on-one. We have primarily it's 4 salespeople. We have 2 on the residential, 1 on the small commercial, and then we have a key accounts manager that would work, for example, with the likes of Goodrich. And they'll go out and meet with customers on a one-on-one basis and go through the options for conversions. It's not just talking about here are the benefits of natural gas, but it's getting down in the basement and looking at what type of equipment is there. Is it oil? Is it propane? And go through the conversion options. If it looks like the equipment needs to be retired, go through the cost of putting in a new system. If it can be converted, there's some programs both on the propane side as well as on the oil side to do that. So the sales representatives will go through all those options. They'll provide a little bit of payback depending on how much oil is used and what the price is. They'll talk about the location of the service line. So the main will be out in the street, and there'll be a service line that will be going to the home or business, and the sales representative will be able to sort of talk with the customer and find out where that preferred location are. There are a number of rules and regulations, parameters that we have on where that meter can be located in the service line. So we'll certainly work with the customer and then within those conditions. And then finally, we'll look at the condition of the existing equipment just to make sure that if it was to be converted, that it's of a good condition, good working order to go through that conversion. And then the construction would take place. So there's pre-marking to locate all the underground utilities. There'd be a dig safe on that. And then there's 3 different phases. I went into this a little bit earlier, but there's 3 different types of pipeline installation. There's kind of that mainline pipe that would be going into the community, and it would be that, let's say, the main line over to a Goodrich, for example. That would be a larger diameter pipe, somewhere around 4 to 6 inches, and these are typically buried 2 to 3 feet.
3 feet of cover, yeah.
3 feet of cover. And then, so that would be the main line pipe into the community, and then going into individual neighborhoods would be a smaller diameter pipe. That would be the 2-inch pipe, and then from that street into the home would be about a 3/4 inch diameter surface line. We handle it all. We'll do the front end of it. We'll do the cleanup and restoration as well, making sure that if there's any digging that's required, that it's all reseeded. And I think this is one of the key things, is that throughout the construction process, it's not only the upfront planning, but it's also what's been very effective is meeting with the communities on a weekly basis or as needed basis to just go through the schedule and understand anything that's going on with the community that needs to be addressed relative to the construction. I think, for example, I know in the case of Jericho, that Route 15 is a very busy corridor. I know in the case of Heinsberg, 116, very busy corridors as well. So we work with those towns to address any concerns they have about traffic.
So where is this distribution line responsibility of the property owner? From the main line, from the side street, or how far do you go and how far does someone else have to pay for it to get to their property?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what we do is we pick up the first 100 feet. So if you're within 100 feet of that line, we pay for it. If you're 500 feet from that line, what we'll do is a economic analysis basically. We'll say, okay, this is how much it would cost. These are the revenues that we would get from this customer, and if the revenue's greater than the investment, then we just put it in for free. If there's a deficiency there, then there'd be a contribution that would be required.
I have a question. Sure. On the local lines that are going down the street, I noticed that they're really small lines, but do you put 2 lines in the street so there is no cut, or do you, if it's on one side, do you jack under, or do you make cuts in the street in order to get to the other side? How is that done?
I can answer that. I think, a lot of times case by case, but predominantly we don't have dual mains running down each side of the street. We use trenchless technologies to cross the street. Though if there's utilities on the street, you need to locate those and make sure that, we don't, bore through and damage any facilities. But predominantly just it'll be on one side, and then we'll make the crossings.
Yeah, checked underneath.
Correct. Any of the contractors that would be hired to do a job like this would be well-versed and have all the equipment to do anything from simple trenching to jack and bore or horizontal directional drilling, those type of things.
We actually have a couple of slides here that talk about the construction techniques. As Tim was mentioning, there's trenching, hole hogging, and boring. This would be a good example of it, but this was a case of a trench, and now you can see the restoration piece has already started, but you can see there was a trench to install that line along the street. In this case, it's a hole hog. I don't know if you want to describe
Yeah,
it.
basically what a hole hog is, it's a pneumatic tool that's hooked to an air compressor, and you have a trench or an open hole at one end and an open receiving pit at the other end, and it's hooked through when it basically vibrates through. Your capability, you can only really go maybe like 30, 40 feet in length, but for service lines, you can, that's one way of getting from the main out to, or one hole across the line can get you, 80 feet to someone's house. As you saw on that previous slide, that was a date, that was a 2007. That's, the technology then in the early 2000s, in the 90s, a lot of our installs were, through the method of either open digging or hole hog. Still good at, in some cases, tight, in the city area. You can't just directional drill, but a lot of stuff now is directional drilled, where you can go more than that 40 feet trenchless.
And the directional drill would be,
And if anyone's not familiar with that, basically what it is, it's rods that are pushed, and then another rod inserted, and just you can go. Some machines can go thousands of feet, depending on your diameter and your conditions. What they do is that all those rods would come out, and then a pipe would be connected at the other end, and then pulled back through. So it'd be a two-phase process.
And that's including ledge, they go through ledge?
You can't, this particular machine and this type of directional drilling would not be effective in ledge. There is some areas, if you know, where it's rock, by rivers, or you can actually do rock bores.
Okay.
When we say directional drilling, a lot of people think it's like, it's like a drill. This is, again, it's just the rods that are pushed through. There is some that are actually, you can actually drill. You core out, that hard surface, and a pipe, could be brought through. These are good, in more of a rural or more, maybe some of these side neighborhoods where you have long stretches where you don't have a lot of utilities. Here, this is not effective in necessarily really in the downtown type area, because you still have to expose utilities and other things.
Yeah, I just wanted to expand on Bill's question. Tim, you outlined about how a typical new connection where it in essence covers the first 100 feet. My question is really about who owns the pipe. Where does regardless of who pays for the initial hookup, who owns what?
so Vermont Gas will own all the way up to the meter, and so the demarcation occurs at the outlet of the meter. So the piping downstream of that meter would be the customer's responsibility, and then before that would be Vermont Gas's.
Okay.
Do you put meters on houses, or where would you put them? Do you put them out?
I don't know if there's a slide on here, but it would be, typically it'd be, at the foundation wall.
Oh, okay.
And it would enter through the sill of the home. So the service line would come underground, basically kind of U-shaped up, and it would be within a fist distance from the edge of the foundation wall. Then a pipe, a meter bar, support bar is hung on that, and that's what the meter hooks to.
Is it a similar meter to LP?
Yes,
Yeah.
in appearance they can look very similar.
Can't use the same one
No,
though. Okay.
no. So this is become more more common in the construction industry. But again, each phase of our construction process here in another community, it's case by case. Sometimes open trenching is the best way, sometimes the whole hog, and sometimes the directional drill.
Question, who owns the meter? Does Vermont Gas own the meter?
Yes. So we take full responsibility.
So in other words, you're just responsible for what's inside your house or your property, the
Exactly.
building?
Yep.
Okay.
But Vermont Gas would do the installation of the interior or the house? Could?
There are some things that we do and other things that we don't. Like in the case of a new heating system,
Mhm.
we don't install those. What we do is we do water heaters. We have a rental water heater program. So we'll come in and do the full gas hookup. We'll install the water heater and we'll get it up and going. And I think the lowest charge is maybe $14, $15 a month for that rental. I mentioned earlier about the conversion burner. That's just taking the oil burner out, putting a gas burner in, doing all the piping to it, and getting that up and running. So Vermont Gas will take responsibility for doing all that, and that comes to about $20 a month. And those types of programs bring down that initial cost of converting over to gas, and we found it to be, that it's a service that customers like. In the case of propane, we don't have a similar type program, but usually the payback on propane is very quick. Generally, there's a natural gas conversion kit that you can get with propane equipment, or you could drill out the orifice. And in that case, it's usually, I don't know, maybe somewhere around $400, $500, $600 to do that. And the typical savings are somewhere around $1,200 to $1,600, as you saw earlier. So the payback on a propane conversion is somewhere around 6 months.
Very good. Any more questions? Otherwise, continue.
So that was on the construction side. I think we basically covered this. We can do the conversion. You can actually see from the picture here that's a conversion burner. So before that, there was an oil burner there. Our technician removed that and then installed the gas-fired system. We have 20 technicians on staff that do this type of work, install water heaters, conversion burners, we'll repair equipment, but we by no means do all the work. We have, in fact, a whole network of plumbing and heating contractors that we work with to do a lot of this work. And that's one of the things that we'll be doing, hopefully this year, is sitting down with plumbing and heating contractors in the Addison County area that service Vergennes and Middlebury, and explaining to them, natural gas equipment, the certification requirements, the licensing requirements, and a little bit how it is that we operate. I think part of the success of doing this expansion is going to be bringing in the contractors and working together with them. So I think that's a critical piece of this. At the same time, these are services that we provide today, but they're not necessarily tied into the gas service. So that's the conversion piece, and then...
Go ahead,
Oh,
Ziggy.
sorry.
That's okay, on that conversion piece, if I understand this right, furnaces, you were explaining about the hot water heaters.
Yeah.
But you're saying that you actually could put a unit in there and charge so much a month to use that unit in that furnace? Is that what you were?
Yeah,
I
so...
think I lost you, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, so what we would do in the case of a furnace is very similar to a boiler.
Yeah.
In the case of a furnace, there's a burner in there that would be oil-fired today. We would pull that burner out and we'd install one of these gas burners. And we'd do all the hookup. We'd sort of hook up the gas, we'd get it going again, and the cost of that is $20 a month to do that. And as long as that burner was servicing that furnace, that charge would remain in place. And then eventually that equipment will need to be retired, and then we'll take the burner back and the fee stops, and that's the end.
Can you purchase it outright?
You could, yeah. What we find is that most people like this type of program, especially if they're only if they're, like in the case of a furnace, if they're 5 years in, the furnace is only gonna last another 10 years. Do the conversion, and then in 10 years, you can buy the, a brand new system and install that.
So if you do that in your own equipment, do you still charge to install that, or is that part of this $20 a month fee?
Once you own the equipment?
No, when you're installing it. It's like when I get the Green Mountain Power, they'll put everything there, and they don't
Sure.
charge me for putting that because I pay rent on it. So how would that work with you installing this conversion? Would there be a fee that people would have to pay, or is that gonna go with the $20 a month?
That goes with the $20.
Oh,
So
okay.
all of that upfront cost,
Yeah.
the piping that's required, actually installing it, the cost of the unit itself, all of that is included in the $20 per month. So I think that, that's one of the attractive features is, so essentially you can convert over to gas with virtually no upfront cost. Okay, so that's the conversion side, and then one of the things that we do every year, in fact, we should be getting this within the next couple of weeks for 2012, is we send out a survey to all customers that have converted over the past year. I want to say within a couple of weeks of the time they convert, we send out the survey, we get it back, and then we hold them till the end of the year, and then basically put together some feedback on how we've done. And this is the overall results, but we even break it down by construction, conversion, sales and marketing, each aspect of the conversion. And one of the things we're very pleased with is the reception that we've gotten on those conversions. We're somewhere around 90% of customers thought it was very good or excellent. Now, turning to the footprint itself, this is one of the areas that when we meet with communities and towns, we come up with kind of our initial thoughts as to what the footprint would be. We love to put gas service everywhere, and we love to serve every home and business in Vermont. But we also know at the same time that there are some economic boundaries of doing that, much like with sewer and water systems, for example. There's just an economic boundary. And so we need to make sure that it's feasible. And for us, a good rule of thumb around density is if you look at quarter-acre and half-acre lots, that those seem to, as a rule of thumb, seem to be make sense in terms of the economics, and of course, serving large businesses like a Goodrich. One thing to note is, I think this is true with every community that we've gone into, is the original footprint that we had in the first year isn't the footprint that we have today. Is over time, we may look at a street with 10 homes and say, wow, that would be a great street to serve with natural gas. The first year we're there, no one's interested. Well, if no one's interested, even though we've marked it as an area that we think we're going to serve, it doesn't make sense to put the pipe there. Later on, customers may change their minds, so we may get a lot of interest, and then we'll go back in a later year and be able to and expand that line and provide service within that neighborhood. So the initial footprint that we start out with doesn't mean that it's the end result. And in cases that I mentioned earlier, in cases where it looks like the investment would be larger than the revenues, we do offer what's known as a contribution in aid of construction, which provides for that difference between the revenues we receive from a project and the investment. And I can say it, especially with some of the oil and propane prices that we've seen. I mean, we've seen contributions in the neighborhood of thousands of dollars, given the benefits of being on natural gas. So, with that, this is the footprint that we are looking at. It's this is something that normally it's something that we sit down with the communities first and sort of have a discussion around. As I was mentioning earlier, in this case, where we needed to make the 248 filing, we needed to put something in that regulatory filing that would sort of give a visual as to what the footprint was going to be. So in this case, as I mentioned earlier, we looked at where the density was the greatest, and we identified those areas, and we've highlighted it in the green here, which I think picks up the majority of the Vergennes community. Now, having said that, if there are areas on here that are not identified, that's something that, you know, we'll sit down, and I think I shared this earlier, you know, that's something that we'll sit down and look at on an individual basis. And, you know, like I said, there may be streets on here that we think it's going to make sense to convert, or make sense to put the pipeline, but there's no customer interest to do that. So in those cases, we wouldn't necessarily do it. There may be other areas that on here that when we take a second look, we think, you know, it makes a lot of sense. So this is, think of it as a starting point.
Mike, I just wanted to, I know there's some folks in the room that, you know, have seen some of this, and I think it's easiest to talk about what's not on the map as opposed to talking about what's on the map. And Tim and I met a couple weeks ago, and Tim left with a map that had a lot of circles on it that I pointed him to, that, you know, in part wondering, like, why isn't this on there, number one. Number two, I think there's a mistake here, and that can happen.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, for instance, if we just take a look at this map and go clockwise, starting in the lower left-hand corner, you can see at Hopkins Road, it appears that service is planned to be brought to Country Commons, but not further down that street to Michael Daniels' farm, let's say. All right, that's the way this is drawn. There is a 7-lot subdivision down through there, so you know, so some of that area is covered. West Main Street, you know, there's probably about 10 houses.
Got more?
I don't have any extras. On West Main Street, you know, there is a number of houses beyond the cemetery, and you know, Tim and I have talked about that it is an area of ledge, and one of the things that I mentioned to Tim, or requested that Vermont Gas take a look at, would be the possibility of serving that end of West Main Street by having a line run through Country Commons. Right? Now, obviously, Tim has talked about lines, my words, not his, generally stay within the city street rights of way, but in some instances, you know, it can make economic sense to seek an alternate route. So that's something that we talked about. On Panton Road, very much to my surprise, I can remember going to 5 or 6 meetings about this project, and I've heard this density requirement, and then when I looked down and saw that the mobile home park wasn't on the map, and Tim's circled that, and just want to let you know, Tim, that I did send an email to Terry McKnight, who is the executive director. He wrote me back though, so he's got some device. Anyway, he's the executive director of Addison County Community Trust, which owns the mobile home park. And I just asked him, reported that this wasn't shown, and asked him how he felt about having lines, you know, throughout the park, and he said yes, and yes, I should have brought my email, but anyway, okay. He's very much interested in talking to Vermont Gas about service to the mobile home park. Right. So I just want to throw that out there. Yep. Crossing the bridge, High Street, I still think that it's just a mistake. There is a number of houses along High Street. Yep. And then Comfort Hill, what I asked Tim to at least take a little bit harder look at is Comfort Hill Kennel. I don't know, you know, they would have to figure out what the demand is out there, because obviously there's a considerable gap between the developed area of Comfort Hill and Comfort Hill Kennels and Ed Sear is the last out there. But I've asked him to, you know, at least, you know, take a look at that area. So as I mentioned to you, Tim left a map with a lot of circles and question marks on it, so I gave him some homework.
And I can tell you, this is the process that we go through with every community, which is, as I
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
we sort of start off with something and then having that local knowledge about different areas and you know, looking at this in more detail. I think this is the right way to go.
Yeah, the two, there's two streets on here, Coventry Lane and Thornwood, which are not city streets. And one of the things I don't know is are they not highlighted because they're not city streets, or whether or not the development, the homes are a little further away. So it's just another, I think just about anything that wasn't served ended up with a circle, Tim.
Yeah. And I can say in those cases where they're not part of the city streets, it doesn't mean that there can't be a gas line there. It just
Right.
means that whoever owns that street, or whether
Right.
it's a single or multiple
The
people,
100-foot rule.
we have to get an easement from
Yeah.
that to be able to put a gas line
Past the
there.
trail right there, 500 houses down on Panton Road.
Sure. Yeah.
So-
include your house?
You do. I'm on the line.
And mine.
No, I think this is a good discussion, and this is the type of feedback that is very helpful, and
But
You
you
know,
were
let's-
saying that some of these houses even, or some of these places, even though you've drawn the line, that maybe if some of the people didn't wanna hook on, that maybe you wouldn't be offering gas out there or any place on this property?
it
I mean, in the
could-
city of Vergennes?
Yeah, it could be. You know, I'm just gonna pick on,
So if 2 people didn't want gas and like 3 people did, you would decide if it was feasible or not to run this line?
yeah, in the case of, with your example, if 3 people were interested and 2 weren't, that's probably a case of we would do it. So it wouldn't be that. It would
Or
be
if it was
more-
vice versa, like 2 did and 3 didn't?
Yeah, that type of margin is,
Wow.
you know, as a general matter, that type of margin would be fine. The ones we see is if there's 20 homes on a street and no one's interested or one's interested, that's probably one that, you know, we'd have to take a harder look at.
Well, you know, we must realize that Vergennes is only 1 square mile, so I can't see many things being left out in a square mile. I would see service within the community, complete community.
I do too,
That's right.
yes.
Yeah, like I said, we'll take a look at this. And again, it's, we have to draw that line somewhere, right, that separates where it's feasible. And I can say, and probably Tim knows this firsthand, better than anyone, is we go through a lot of this. Someone, you know, 200, 300, 400 feet from the gas line, they can see one of the markers, but it's just not feasible to be able to expand the line. In some cases, it's distance. In other cases, it's ledge. And so we go through this discussion a lot. But I think with this is very good feedback, and you know, we'll look at each of these neighborhoods.
Will you get back with us to let us know how you feel about each of these neighborhoods? I mean, I feel that everybody in Vergennes ought to have the availability to be able to hook onto gas, and I don't care if there's.
They'll have that ability. It's just that this is just a preliminary, okay?
Well, that's what
This-
I wanna
this
make
doesn't-
sure it is.
This is pretty paper right now, okay? Reality is gonna hit later on when they start doing the digging. And they'll do all that background work, because like they said, they gotta go survey the people, and if it's 20 houses and one wants it, they're probably gonna say, we're not gonna invest it now. Doesn't mean they can't have it later, but somebody's gonna, because they can't afford, you know, it's not cost effective. So I'm sure, so they don't know that until they survey the people. So there's other stuff they have to do once they,
I understand. All right, what about Comfort Hill? There's only 2 people up there. I mean, you ought to be able to give an answer now
You know,
or something like that.
Yeah, I think this is all good feedback. It's hard for me to hear without seeing it and looking at the loads that are there and what it might cost in terms of construction to make a decision. I think that's, our commitment is we'll go back and we'll look at all these. I think it's important that, you know, we want to serve everything that we can, but there is an economic limitation. We experience in our current service area, and we'd experience it in you know, the Addison communities as well. And even with that, though, there's still an ability to do the contribution. You know, even if something isn't feasible, there is the ability to buy down that difference through contribution, which we've been getting from customers.
and again, tonight, to recap what tonight's all about, it's informational. Throw it out there. Doesn't mean it's gonna happen, but this is the present game plan.
Sure, yeah.
Well, actually, I'd like to know who does, is it the homeowner that does the contribution, or is it the city that does the contribution?
Well, it'd be the homeowner. I mean, yeah, it's typically where our contributions come from.
Okay.
And in some cases, you know, especially if it's a private road, for example, the customer may, you know, we may look at the cost and say, you know, there's a gap there between the revenues and investment. And the customer may say, well, what happens if I dig the trench? Well, if the customer ends up digging the trench and does the restoration, maybe that's enough where there isn't a contribution at that point. And I know that that's been something that's been successful with other projects that we've worked on.
Very good. Any other questions? Yes.
So if, as this goes along, I mean, I'm not picking on you, but I just wanna, I've seen things down the road before. As this project goes along and then all of a sudden there is one section that's not gonna get it, okay? Is there, do the city of Vergennes or the people have grounds to debate it with you and to see, you know, and listen to them, why they want it and why maybe if some other people doesn't want it? Are you just gonna say, no, because it's not feasible to us, we're not gonna do it? I mean, we gotta have some, make sure there is some negotiation going on here.
There's a lot of discussion, believe me, there's a lot of discussion that goes on when you have projects that are right at the fringes. And there's a lot of back and forth. And like I was mentioning earlier, it's, gee, could we dig it? Right? That was something that someone had mentioned a few years ago. We said, okay, well, what happens if the customer digs it? Well, you know, then it makes it feasible. So those types of things are getting, you know, just getting creative. So it's not like it's, you know, this is it and that's it. There's a lot of dialogue that goes on.
Well, Tim, I guess my question is who calls the shot?
That's what I'm getting at.
Is it the public relative? Let's be very focused.
Sure.
Panton Road, all right? And let's say that the owners of the mobile home park and the mobile home park want natural gas, but let's say that it's not feasible. Or let's say that when you run your numbers, it's not, all right? What rights does the mobile home park owner have, and what rights do mobile home owners have? Do they go to the Public Service Board? Where can they go?
There's always that avenue. I mean, we are regulated by the Public Service Board, and we will, again, we will run the numbers, we will try and work with, you know, property owners, landowners to get gas service, but at some point there is a feasibility threshold.
All right, so let's,
So in some cases, we'll have customers go to the Public Service Board and say, okay, you know, Vermont Gas is saying this is how much it costs, and we'll get requests that come in from the Public Service Board. And, you know, so that's another avenue that can be pursued.
and this is a prime example, so when you, if you decide that that's not feasible, and then you've got 5 other units down the other end, I mean, it's a good example. So because that's not feasible, those other 5 aren't gonna be able to get it. Past the trailer park, before the line. So
Yeah.
that would rule them out. Is that what would that happen that way?
And I think we're really trying to kill a dead horse here, because
Well, no.
it's too far in the future, and those decisions are, those are things that are gonna change. And some of the things, the city may not, the city's gonna be approached for, can we give the right of way? And we can say yay or nay. There, that's where we can control that. But what they put in the ground is up to them.
And it's private enterprise. We can't force them to do something.
Exactly.
They're in business to make a profit. And if they aren't gonna make a profit, it's gonna cost everyone else more money. And I think it's their decision to make, if it's a financial decision.
But if there's any possibility, I think they're really gonna err on the side of putting it in hopes that down the road, they'll recoup their money. Because it's a customer service company. That's what they're there for. They're there to serve the customer. And that's where they make their money.
And again, we'd love to serve everyone, but the problem is, just as you were saying, Bill, is the problem is if we do that, it's going to drive up our rates. If we serve uneconomic projects, and that's what we're trying to guard against. Well, whether any of these specific projects are or aren't, I can't say. And I want to be clear, I haven't looked at these. We're going to spend a lot of time looking at them, and then we'll get back to you, Mel, at least initially, and give you that feedback.
I just feel there's gonna be people discriminated in here.
I was wondering why that, just say that there's some people up top. I live in the trailer park. John, I live at the trailer park by Goodrich.
Okay.
And John lives up top. I live down to the bottom. Say everybody on top, yes, they want it, but there's probably what, 74, 75 trailers in the park?
73.
73? What if the people like me, because I live down the bottom, what if I want it and some in between me doesn't want it? What is going to happen? Is that mean that I'm going to be left out and John is going to have it because he lives up on the top? But because I live in the bottom and the middle people don't want it, I was just wondering if that was gonna, if that could happen.
Yeah, and I think this is part of what we need to do, is go back. It's hard for me without having looked at it, without having looked at the cost, and, you know, we want to sit down with, did you say Terry McKnight?
Yeah.
And go through, you know, the easement that would be required to install a gas line. So it's hard at this point to provide any good response without looking into this further. So I think that's our commitment, is we will absolutely, all these spots that were identified, we will look at them. We have an objective that we want to provide the service. Let us sit down and see if there's a way working together to be able to do that. I think that's the commitment.
You know, I think, Sylvia, it would behoove you to communicate with Terry as well. I mean, one of the things is that the streets in the mobile home park are not city streets. It's all private land. So that as what Tim's saying is that, you know, they need an easement to get to your mobile home, all right? And the city's not in that loop, and you really aren't either, other than the fact that you pay rent to the community trust. So I think
But
that
I pay taxes at Vergennes.
well, I know you do, but
Yeah.
the point is, the city doesn't own your streets. We don't own any land in the mobile home park, so we don't have the right to grant an easement to Vermont Gas to provide a distribution line down First Street to get to your home. Only the Addison County Community Trust can do that. So just as I wrote Terry, today just to bounce this thing off, you could be doing the same. I mean, I think that if Tim learned that all 73 owners wanted access to natural gas, as you know.
Be the first place they dig.
That's right. The density is far greater than a quarter-acre lot.
73
Okay?
homes in about 6 acres.
See, he'd still have to review that against the trust board. He still has to meet with all of his people
Yeah.
in the trust board to have everyone agree to do that, to make it's like an infrastructure change within the park.
Yeah.
It's a utility that's gonna be available.
It would save the tenants money, which would benefit everybody. You'd think it'd be a no-brainer, but maybe not.
Right, but you have to be able to offer a utility to everyone, make it available. It's just like going down with the end of Panton to
Yeah.
Vergennes line, if you want, per se. It's right to the line, say, okay, this is available to everybody. Otherwise, you can say, okay, we'll put gas on this side of the street and I have it on that side of the street. But you can't do that. You gotta keep it available for everyone if you're gonna bring it in.
It's like if they skipped the park and went to your house.
I know that's not going to
Go to your
happen
house.
without a major contribution.
He's more than 100 foot off the road.
I have-
Go ahead.
You were talking about coming from Hawkins Road up on West Main Street, you know, bringing a line up on,
Yeah.
and that would be going through Ledge or something like that, or
Believe me,
whatever.
it's just an
just an
idea.
idea.
You know,
But the
I was
chances
just
are
pointing
that-
out to Tim that, you know, that there may be an alternative route in this particular instance, that would be part of the feasibility study for that area. Because I think, as you can see, on the surface, it doesn't meet the density requirement, all right? And so, so I was just wondering, given the fact that there's 3 more fourplexes to be constructed in Country Commons, which is closer to the folks that live on West Main Street. That's the point that I was trying to make to Tim, to get him, just to have him understand a little more about the projected development that's going to occur that might be in closer proximity to that neighborhood right there.
But the chances are that may not be feasible, so that would mean that all those houses up there
Don't
will
know.
not,
Right.
yeah.
So the Country Commons you were saying, is that on Hopkins Road?
That's that little, right at the
A little
H.
spur that comes
That's
down?
right, right.
Well, you don't know, Jimmy, we don't know. I mean, it's all.
Yeah.
Until they're there.
Pardon?
Yeah.
And you're saying there's 4 units?
And
What's that?
we're talking now, and by the time you get here, it's gonna be what, 2014, 15, or 2015? And
Yeah,
a
we're talking
lot of things could happen by then as far as buildings going up,
Knows at this point.
coming down. So, yep. Good. Anything else, gentlemen?
I think that was just, we're working on that certificate of public good. We hope to get that by this year. We'll begin outreach in 2014. Again, the main line construction, and then service in 15.
Any final questions of these gentlemen? If not, we'd like to thank you very much for coming. Hopefully, we'll see you around town in the near future.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, I'll jump right on to warrants. Any questions on the warrants? Comments, questions? Everybody sign that. I'd ask for a approval of the Vergennes City Council meeting, January 8th, 2013.
Make said motion.
Randy makes the motion. Do I have a second? Rennie seconds it. Corrections, omissions, or errors? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Go right to budget.
Unless somebody has some questions, I just soon defer, Mike, about the budget. Just let everybody know we're at the 60% point, if you want that as your guide. And if you look through, I think you'll find that we're in pretty good shape right now.
Yep.
Even with the snow?
There's a
I'm sorry?
few,
Even with the
Even
snow?
with the snow.
there's a
Yeah.
few numbers that are up in the budgets, but the actual percentage at the end, the totals look relatively good shape.
Yep.
So, I see overtime on the police department is up there.
That one's a concern, and you'll notice that the capital purchases aren't being made, all right, so.
I actually wish Mike hadn't made that comment, because I realize I haven't been here for a while, but in practically every meeting, my last half dozen meetings, I was asking a question about who pays for us when we go, not as an emergency backup. In other words, we're not going out on Route 7 when there's a car crash and they need, it's when we get called to provide a service with the dog, with the DRE guy, or anything of that nature in another town. And it seems to me, just out of the Addison Independent, that there's probably 2 or 3 calls every single week in that category. And as I play that out, if the chief and the dog go to Bristol and participate in an arrest, the chief is going to be in court about that arrest. And that's costing us money that potentially shows up in the overtime budget. And
Well, he's thinking about the replacement, yeah.
yeah,
Replacement.
and I don't know how to address this, because I've asked the question multiple ways. But the bottom line is, if we are not getting compensated for those sorts of calls outside, I don't think we should go. And the play out of that is fairly obvious, that we make an agreement with those towns that when you call us for, particularly, the chief and the dog whose name I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Keto.
Keto. When the chief and Keto go somewhere, that we get compensated for all the costs related to that issue, and that we would have a contract with that group. So the first thing would be, how much are we doing? Stop it immediately. Do a contract with the towns involved. And I don't know what it takes. I mean, this is one person on the council talking about this, but I have had people come up to me and ask me about that sort of thing.
Well, I guess
So-
the thing that I hope, Peter, that you're not thinking that there's a resident of Panton that's calling 877-2201 or 911 and we're that's not what you're talking about.
No, and I'm not.
Okay.
I'm talking to Vermont State Police, say, our dog is in Newport,
Okay,
and we want you to come down to Panton and do our job for us.
okay.
And my sense is, fine, we have the capability, if
Yep.
we have the capability, go ahead and do it, but compensate us for that, because it's money in our budget.
So do you want us to concentrate on the dog? I mean,
Oh,
I'm
I
happy to
don't know, I mean, that's the one that's fairly obvious.
Okay,
don't
well,
know
I mean,
what else.
it's, we can concentrate on the dog. I will tell you that, obviously, it wasn't that long ago where there was a heroin bust in Leicester. That was a
Yeah.
joint venture.
To understand
There was a
that.
Harris,
That's different. Yeah.
and I will tell you, Peter, that relative to the Ferrisburg incident, which was a joint venture, George and I have talked about how really our overtime should be reimbursed through that process. And so we've approached the DEA or whatever to see if we can't get reimbursed.
Right.
But that's not what you're talking
No,
about.
I'm
You're
not talking
talking
about
about having a contractual relationship with various entities, and so when we're called, we bill for service, no different when we're providing supervision at the prom, okay? That's what you're.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. The same thing as when the paramedics come from Charlotte, they jump on an ambulance call from Vergennes to Burlington.
Yeah.
We pay for that.
You do.
Well,
See, there's a
Somebody
quid
pays
pro
for
quo
that.
that goes on there, and I think that's the difficult
Yeah, yeah.
situation.
I'm sorry.
And I'd like to know, I'd like the chief to come in maybe at a meeting in the next 2 meetings or so to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because he knows a lot more about, the administration of it and the
Yeah.
politics of it and so on.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, because I read that too, and I think, we're paying for this and it's not in town. But on the other hand, it's public safety, and, if the drugs are in Ferrisburg, I just soon go after them, so they don't get into Vergennes.
Yeah.
But,
and I realize it's a complicated issue for exactly what you're talking about.
yeah.
And maybe if we had more specific information. But again, I'm one person, and
Yeah,
if
no,
the
and the
council
fires-
isn't interested.
In the fire service, we have a mutual aid pack, so
Yep.
if we get called to Bristol, it doesn't cost them a dime,
Right,
okay?
yeah.
They get called here, the chances of the number of calls we go to there versus here,
Yeah.
nothing really balances out.
Yeah.
Sometimes fires run high in one area and they run low in the other, and for whatever reason, so.
I'd like to explore it, I guess
Yeah.
that's my basic.
I can tell you what, we have no problem billing anybody, okay? There's no problem with that, all right? The question is it, is it legal and can we collect it, And that's,
Yep, yep.
right, Joan? Right.
Oh, you can bill and they don't pay?
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
But I think the broad question is, can we get a relationship so that we're billing for some services, all right?
Yeah.
I mean, because, obviously, I think the whole discussion about a regional police department, that's 3 nights worth of meeting. I think you're focused really on, relative to what kind of services are we called upon that really should be billable
Yeah.
responses,
I think that's essentially my
And,
question.
and really, we're doing, proms and grant work, and we're doing some things. It's that whole other chunk that we aren't.
Okay. My point, too.
I just have one
Sure.
follow-up comment on that. I'm not sure about, how we respond to communities themselves, but if it's related to the state police, I think that is a totally different situation, and that our relationship with the state police is important for us to respond because they respond when we need additional people. And also, there's one other aspect there that I worried about when I was manager, and that is the state police are dispatching for us. That could stop at any time. And part of the relationship is if we're good with them, they'll be good with us. And so that's one relationship I wouldn't want to see tampered with, because I think we're getting a benefit from that relationship.
Yes, that's, you don't see the dollar amount that cost us, and that could get scary, so, no, good point, Randy, thank you. Any other comments? If not, committee reports, updates and of goals, anything, any high flyers here that anybody wants to throw out?
Well, I just, Mel and I talked briefly, I tried to send him a third draft today of the tower policy, but it didn't go through. I don't think I attached it, actually. We'll talk about that in the next couple meetings.
Okay, that's ongoing, all right, thank you.
Rec Committee had a meeting on the 11th, and we covered a number of issues. Primarily, we're moving ahead with the toddler park, and I got an email from Mel saying that David Raphael has agreed to maybe help design that.
Very
Yeah, and so we're looking at the land between, as we've said before, between the pool and East Street, that open lot there.
Super.
We're gonna have some conversations with some of the biking organizations, Sojourn and Vermont Bicycle and Bristol, about how to maybe make Vergennes bike-friendly or attract some of these bike tours. We think there's some real opportunities there. And I guess we talked about the grant, which has probably been submitted. And right now we've got, trying to find a time, we've got some real energy in that committee to set up regular meetings. We're trying to find a time to do that.
Joe?
Yep.
What do you think this is gonna do to the surrounding communities? Do you actually think that's gonna draw people from Canton, Waltham in to use those facilities? Not that I have a problem with it, I just wanna.
The toddler
The
park?
toddler park?
Yeah, I really don't, my kids have long passed the toddler age, but, so I don't know how many people are out there that may be, I mean, certainly the city pool does attract people from surrounding communities, so potentially there could be.
One of the things, Mike, that everybody ended up with, when Joe runs a meeting, everybody ends up with homework. Anyway, one of the things that Tara's homework was, it was a decade ago or a decade and a half ago when there was a major improvement to the playground facility behind the elementary school. And I know that Tim and Liz Ryan were some of the players involved with that. And we think that this project could be a similar effort to raise some funds, because I think you're right. It's something that, it's serve more than Vergennes, but, and, basically why, we've talked about why we're doing this is that the elementary school playground is closed to the public when school is in session. And so therefore, it's a problem for folks with 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-olds that aren't going to school. Number two, the locate, if you think about in close proximity to the swimming pool, it really, it just makes some sense. So the committee's excited about that. And I think by bringing David in, then we can start talking about budgets and going from there. So
I don't know if this was part of the conversation, but I know Cheryl was looking for the possibility of using part of that property as a path to help jump into the walking trail at some point. So I don't know if that could fit as part of the overall.
In a while, I know the path right now kind of comes in behind the ice rink or the
Yeah,
basketball
and
court.
she wanted to know if that might be able to skip around behind on the same level, because it would be, they want to see if, she was talking about if it could be somewhat handicap accessible to a point, I think at one time. We realized that not all of it could because of the hills, but, so, that's just food for thought.
Maybe you can email her directly.
Yeah, I'll make a note to email her and,
Thanks.
Avoid speaking for her.
Anything else, Joe?
no, that's it.
Thank you.
Good idea.
Anything? Peter, energy? Anything? How you doing? Better?
I'm
Ready to run the marathon?
energy?
I'm almost back, yeah.
How's your
Were you
energy?
up on,
She's almost back up.
I was gonna say, were you up on Church Street in that run today?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I have not run for a long time.
Hey, anything?
Well, the question is when do you want me to give the report for the police committee? I can either do it in the committee part.
Why don't we
get to
take, when we get
to the,
down there?
To the warning.
Well, yeah, let's do it there. Let's do it there, all right? Because I know we want to get to Jay here in a few seconds. Just a little bit about what's been going on behind the scenes. We've been watching what's been happening on the website and where the hits have been going. The employment hits were quite high on our job applications. Police stations was up there. City Voice, we're finding that probably isn't a good avenue to post it on the website because it's not getting a good response. Putting it out in mailers, and so the city, the next mayor, whoever, will want to be looking at this. We're not sure if we can put something together between now and get it publicized between now and town meeting day. So we don't know if that's going to happen.
I was wondering if, you know, the Front Porch Forum seems to be getting more popular. I wonder if you've ever maybe put a link in there. The new City Voice is now online with a link to send people to the website, if that may help.
Good. Good. I'll see how I can try to get that done.
See if the boss can,
Well, she's really busy right now. Doing a lot of different things. This is your final warning, last call for anything you want to go into the PowerPoint for the meeting. As I was telling Shannon earlier, if it's going to be part of the PowerPoint, which I would like to have one PowerPoint, so that if you're going to get up and give a speech or talk about something, I have it in there so I don't have to go from one PowerPoint to another, because things are dangerous with me and the computer, okay? We'll put it that way. So, and I tried to get a hold of Eileen tonight because I really wanted her to hear this first before I announced it. The council has agreed that we would dedicate this year's annual report to Greg Clark. And so the next item on the agenda is number 6, public comment, and we opened that up for Jay, and Jay wants to speak about for a few minutes about the VUHS bond vote. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. So,
They hit the mailings hit the houses today.
yeah, there's another mailing that came out. So this one's a little bit different. There's also some information about the track and field as well. So the biggest thing is that we're really just trying to encourage people to come to the informational meeting on Thursday, and mostly just to answer the questions and those sorts of things. So, because we know there's probably a lot of questions out there, we want to make sure that people are educated. I think the best way that the council can help us is to, again, is to just, just to encourage people to come on Thursday, so we can have a conversation about it, so they can hear from the board why they view both votes, or both parts of the bond vote as important. And I would just say the track and field, I know a lot of people view it as something that's extra, that's not really needed. And I will say, just related to that there are a lot of upgrades needed on that field. And so we're going to be spending a significant amount of money just to get that field so that it's usable on a more regular basis, replacing the drainage, things like that. So that money that we would spend on that and keeping it as natural grass could be spent, on the turf field, which would last a lot longer, those sorts of things. So anyway, I don't want to take a lot of the council's time.
VUHS, library?
What's up?
At the meetings at VUHS in the library?
It's actually, it's going to be the library or the auditorium. I'm not sure. We're talking about the auditorium because, again, we're hoping that a number of people are going to show up. And yep. And so, and at this point,
6, right?
Yeah, actually, yeah, right on the front here, you'll notice that there's a building tour at 6. So time to walk through the auditorium, walk through the cafeteria, see some places where the roof is leaking if you want. those sorts of
Especially
things.
tomorrow.
What's that?
Tour tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly, so.
Well, we can see the pails.
You can certainly see the paint peeling or the water running down through students' lockers. So obviously, I think those parts, the roof, things like that, people know that those are necessary. We've been receiving some feedback about parts of the auditorium. You don't need to do all of this. If we're in there and it's getting upgraded, you might as well do it now. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot more expensive to do it later. And the things that the board came up with were things that are important to have a good auditorium. And there's a lot of community organizations that would use it that aren't. Certainly the elementary schools use it, those sorts of things. So I don't know if there are any other questions or.
Anybody have any questions of Jay?
I want to go Thursday.
Okay, yeah, excellent. And again, we're encouraging whether you're for or against, come and tell us what you're thinking. And, again, we just want to have a conversation about it and have educated voters. So,
That is what is needed, educate the people. Thank you.
yeah, thank you for the time.
Yep. Okay, item number 7A, Watertown. Water Tower Fund, as that's being deferred, going to be fiscal year ending June 30th. Audit. Oh, I left mine at home. That's all right, don't need it.
Well,
That's right.
anyway, what we did, we didn't really spend much time at all at the last meeting, and so we just deferred this. This is not something that requires action by the city council. I will tell you that on the 22nd, I met with the Board of Auditors, but Henry Broughton, Robert Hoover Morris, and Ed Nill, obviously, there might have been a time when auditors, our local auditors came and audited the books. That hasn't occurred for many decades. So anyway, we obviously hire Father Gil, Segali, and Valley to conduct our audit. And what happens is this goes out to the Board of Auditors, and then I meet with them to go over the audit. I will tell you that when I meet with them, and what I'll tell you, there's a lot of, this is a big document, and if you wanted to say, well, just point me to the meat of this thing, and if you were to look at page 4. Those are the fund balances of our major funds, and they're all in the black. And if you turn to page 26 and 28, those are all of the funds that we talked about a few meetings ago. That some do, some don't need. Don't need policy. So if you wanted to just jump to the numbers that may have the most meaning, those are the pages, page 4, 26, and 28. The other thing, this year, you ended up with an additional report because FY12, for a year that the only time I think when the city ever received more federal money than FY12 was probably back when we did the wastewater treatment plant in 1978 or 1979. And so the Single Audit Act was triggered because we collected more than $500,000 in federal money. And it was way more than that. It was $670,000 for the senior housing project funneled through our accounts. The 300 some odd thousand, maybe 283 is what funneled through during the fiscal year for the Graham shelter. The $400,000 stairway project. And then a bunch of Homeland Security grants for primarily radios went through the system. And so I don't want to say you'll never see this again, but it was a year where all of the federal money funneled through in the same year. So anyway, that's what that report is. So there is a management letter included in your packet. I know there's one thing that Joan and I have talked about. There's that she needs to do is to make sure that there's somebody else trained in her office to do deposits. Ed Nill said, well, the cure is just don't let Joan go on vacation. You wouldn't have that problem. So I said I told Ed that I'd bring that up to her and then run.
Your leave request for last December? No, I signed it tonight. I approved it tonight.
Mel,
Thanks, Shane.
There was
Yeah.
one, and I didn't That's in a different folder at home and I forgot about it. There was one recommendation about some certain type of accounting rule.
Gatsby.
Can you elaborate on that, since I'm not an accountant?
Ah,
Do you
well,
know what it is?
Well, there's two things that we always have the exception, and that is that we run the sewer fund as an enterprise fund, as opposed to some other type of fund. And basically, you know, one of the key differences is that if you run it in a utility fund, you actually have to budget depreciation and you actually expense depreciation. I've often wondered about, you know, if you were to adopt that kind of budgeting, could conceivably you might end up having to increase rates just because your financial statements end up expensing more than what we normally would feel. All right, we basically run the sewer department on a cash basis of accounting. All right, we collect. We don't depreciate the assets and charge that against the fund balance. So that's that part.
How do other municipalities do it with sewer plants? Do you know?
I don't know.
It, I don't know the count. There are a number of them that have gone with both of those Gatsby rules. Communities that borrow on their own, it's a definite advantage. It will affect bond rating. In our case, we wouldn't probably borrow on our own. It would always be through the bond bank.
Yeah.
So it's less of an advantage. While I'm talking,
Sure.
I would like us to look in. There is an expense involved in getting those rules, complying with those rules. But I'd like to kind of find out what the expense might be, because the one advantage, I think, of a community like this, of going with those rules, is that the audit statement is substantially different than the audit statement we get now. It's much more transparent. It's much easier for the public to understand how the city runs financially with those audit reports under one of the rules. And I think that would be an advantage, but it may not be worth it because of the time and the money involved in basically those rules make a city government run like a business. You have to put down all of your assets, you have to depreciate your assets, that sort of thing. That's what the change does.
And it's very time-consuming.
Yeah, one of the things, Bill, I can tell you that I can remember when the Addison County Solid Waste District was started, and when it started, it was set up GASB compliant, and when you start out owning nothing, and you know everything that you've bought, and you depreciate it, you know, it's I don't want to say it's easy, but it's certainly easier than the city of Vergennes, you know, which was created in 1788, to try to figure out, you know, where's our starting point? I mean, if you think about all the real estate we own, the buildings we own, and trucks we own, and all that, to try to calculate the city's assets is a major undertaking. And what I would do is saying, what would I do with the information once I got it? Well, you know, I mean, yeah, it's like, oh, sweet, it's $32.7 million. Well, that was, you know, I mean, what do we do with it? I will tell you, I have one of the first things that I did when I came back to work here, because I don't know if Jenny Bertrand watches these things, but anyway, Jenny left in May of 2008, and it kind of left, you know, she left with a tremendous amount of knowledge of the financial system, and so there was a learning curve that Joan and Rennie and Melissa had to do. And it got to a point where that particular year we did a compilation as opposed to an audit. And it was the same year that a bond vote got approved. And I'm thinking, oh, damn, I know, look what Rennie did to me. I knew that you could not get bond money from the municipal bond bank without an audit, and I'm sitting here with a compilation. So one of the things that I did to call Robert Gothier is I wanted to know, number one, whether or not GASB compliance was required by the municipal bond bank, and number two, if not, do you think that that's coming down the road? And he said no. Okay, so So I don't want to say that there's nothing driving me to do it, but if the state of Vermont said effective 2018 to be eligible to borrow money from the municipal bond bank, you had to be that. Yeah, we got to head there. We got to head there. But there's just nothing really, compelling to undertake.
The management system that you have in there, it helps you manage your equipment. So if you got a boiler and it's X number of years old, you know that in 2025, that needs to be replaced. So you're supposed to be putting money aside. So it's a good process, but.
It's nice to have reserves for replacement and so on for
It is.
capital improvements.
Okay, great. Any other comments, questions? Okay, then we'll move on to, we're deferring the Bixby Memorial Library. And so, Mel, it's you.
Yeah, I'm
city
just
manager.
gonna burn through a bunch of items.
I see that.
One,
Wow.
real quick though. One is, I couldn't remember if I told you, if we did get our municipal equipment loan approved. Remember we applied for money from the Vermont Municipal Equipment Fund to fund 75% of the new public works vehicle. That did get approved, and the check showed up in Jones till a week or so ago, so that $93,000, and it doesn't show up in your current budget, but I cleaned that up today, so the next time you will see that loan proceeds there. Then the other thing is we got a check for $4,000 the other day from Addison Housing Limited Partnership that deals with the Maynard building. There was a time where they told us that they were gonna pay off that loan, some 70-odd thousand, and then they told us that we weren't gonna get any money at all. And then the other day, a check, Joan gets this check for $4,064, and I think she spent 2 hours trying to figure out what the hell it was for. And because it didn't equal taxes, it didn't equal sewer, it didn't equal those two buildings, it couldn't figure it out because it didn't come with any letter, right? It just came in the mail. Anyway, eventually, we figured it out. And so the revolving loan fund did increase by $4,000. The Public Works employee admin position, the Public Works employee position, we had 22 applicants. Jim and I interviewed 4 people on Monday, and we actually had 5 scheduled, but one, the last one has opted out, and so Jim and I are going to meet tomorrow and hopefully make a decision on that employee. The admin position, Joan and I, it's on her desk really. The ad is on Joan's desk, and so once Joan and I settle on the wordage of this ad, we'll get that out in the paper. Annual report, that's taking up a chunk of our time here. We're on deadline as usual, putting the annual report together. It's not quite the race as it's been in the past because the voters approved that we're not distributing that to every doorstep any longer.
When do you need my
Joan.
article by?
Huh?
When do you need my article by?
What article?
The one I usually write?
Oh, that one? Tomorrow.
Just use last year's and change the date.
I've sent emails out to, everybody but you, Mike. And actually, we don't have a deadline, yet, but there's gonna be one here. Well, I know. Well, yeah, we'll have a deadline here pretty soon, but we've got it all priced. We know how many we're gonna order. We sent the financial statements to Judy, because those needed to be,
And she hasn't posted them yet, but she knows that she has to post it.
so we're working on it. I know Shannon's got his done. I proofread his today. Jimmy Brewer hasn't made it his. I know everybody's working on them, including you, Mike.
I'm
So
glad you mentioned Jimmy Brewer.
yeah, I don't have a deadline, but let me just say, Tuesday, next week sometime. Joe mentioned about the V-Trans grant. Just briefly, we did get that into the mail on January 18th. came to the conclusion that the study that you were talking about, Rennie, really was a feasibility study, and therefore thinking that somebody might know that study's in the works. I didn't want to apply for a study when part of it was already in a previously paid study. So we opted to apply for funding to do the first phase of the project, to extend the sidewalk from Vergennes, to do a construction project as opposed to a study project, and use the feasibility study for the first 750 or 800 feet that would extend the sidewalk from Vergennes Redemption Center to Champlain Discount Foods. And I've also met with the new principals of Kennedy Brothers about improving access management. I mean, as you all know, they have a 134-foot wide curb cut, which I think is just a little over a norm. And he absolutely agrees that that would improve safety to get that curb. So it's a combination sidewalk extension and access management project. And also in my cover letter, and we'll see how they react to this, is to ask to allow us to use some money to investigate the feasibility of digging through the old tunnel. All right. And now I know that typically they like you to apply for scoping or construction. Well, I break the rule. I just break the rules. We apply for some construction, and the request is for $100,000 of federal money. The project with engineering and everything is $125,000. So there's a local share of $25,000. And what I told them was that we do have $5,000 in our current sidewalk budget, and that there is funds in the water tower fund is one potential source of that local share. But I haven't. We don't have a policy on that fund yet. So anyway, yeah, I guess. So anyway, that's that one. The other day I submitted a request for what I'm going to call an administrative amendment to our COPS grant. I mentioned to you at one point that I felt that the COPS grant came in a little less than it should have, and when I dug through it, we found George is a little embarrassed by this, but I'm pretty confident that George had an inputting error. He's not a data entry guy. I fed him the information on fringe benefits, and you'd be amazed how a zero changes the numbers on an annual basis. So I put in an amendment. What I really think is really, it's not like you can apply for an amendment to change your grant from 1 police officer to 3 police officers, but I really think that this was a clerical error. I think that it was an inputting error, and I'm hoping to make it through the review process to get that change. All I did was I just did the math. It equals $57,000, but we really don't have a $57,000 problem. But that's what the award should have been, and had we got it, we wouldn't use it anyway. We wouldn't use it all anyway. But anyway, so I submitted that the other day. I've got a note here about quarterly fund review, because I think that's one of the things that we wanted to do, was to take a look. I haven't had time to update my spreadsheet, Joan, from the trial balance so that the group could do that. So
You can do that in February.
yeah, I'll wait for either,
February.
we'll talk, we can talk about me. So I want to do that, because I think that that's one of the things that the budget report doesn't do. It doesn't give you the picture on that. The other note here, in the municipal plan, there was a policy in there about creating a recycling task force. It didn't actually say who was going to appoint that task force, so I created the task force the other day. And we have a task force of myself, Jim Larrow, and Cheryl Brinkman. I don't know if you know about this yet, Peter, but anyway, that's the initial task force. And I think that in part, when the plan was written, the task force was about taking a look at our recycling program. The task force the task at hand is actually much greater than that, and that's because of compliance with the new solid waste law relative to the fact that all public trash has to include an accompanying recycling container. And so every time that we have an event, you know, you have 2 dumpsters, not 1, you know, so we're working on more than that. The other thing is relative to our own recycling program is we think that under the new law, if you have a recycling program, you have to take lawn and leaf waste, and you have to take organics, you know, by 2015, and so it really overcomplicates our program. So anyway, I've got a task force, you know, started to take a look at that. And the last item I have, Mike, is really about meeting schedule for February, because I'm not here the second week of
All right,
February.
how many
so-
wanna excuse Mel so he can go play golf?
There you
I
go.
see your hands.
I will.
All those opposed?
Yeah, you can, it's all right with me.
Okay,
I plan my vacation for next week when there's no meeting, just.
that was nice of you.
Just send in the assistant manager.
Okay. All
you go.
right, so, Mel, when are you gone?
Well, I am not here, I'm not here,
When do you
so
fly
we
out?
normally would meet on the 12th and the 26th, so I'm not here on the 12th. So, now, and I'm gonna just tell you, we do have some things on our plate here, so I would, you know, why don't we might have to meet on the 19th and the 26th, which also means that you're meeting the following Monday as well. But I think you definitely gotta meet on the 19th. And,
Okay, so let's definitely schedule a meeting for the 19th.
and then we'll see where we're
We'll
at.
see where we're at.
Because you got town meeting, you know,
Yeah, we got town
you
meeting
may
on
have
the
them stacked up
4th or
here.
5th? 4th,
Fourth.
yep, 4th. So, and,
No, 5th.
no, 4th. Voting's on the 5th.
Okay, sorry, I was thinking of voting.
So in essence, we'll meet on the 19th. We may end up having to meet on February 26th as well. All right, we just may need to do that. But anyway, we'll get by the 19th at that point. So that's all I had, Mike.
Okay,
Mike, just as an FYI, I will not be here at the 19th meeting, and probably not the 26th if we have one then. And that's the end of my stuff.
okay,
And after that, I should be normal. As normal as ever, please.
okay. Thank you for the clarification. I'm glad we can joke about things. Okay, let's see. Next one's the big one. New business, annual city meeting warnings. Okay, where'd my draft copy go? I lost it. It wasn't my plan.
Joan has put the warning together, you know, based on, you know, in part, obviously, the positions, and then the petitioned articles for funding. And then there's an article that has a bunch of blanks in it, and that's Rennie's report.
There it is. I pulled it up. Okay. There's nothing we have to enact upon. I don't know if you want to go through these article by article, or just a particular one. Do we need to go through each one by one, or do them? Just go to Rennie's and come up with a dollar figure and make a stat in the back. Oh, I've been trying calling you, and you just too damn busy to answer your phone.
Now, that would be me. Oh, I have a card then. Yeah, somebody else gave me that card.
Did he talk to you yet?
I haven't talked to him.
Huh?
No, I haven't talked to him.
You will wanna.
Okay.
Oh. Another person, just to let you know, and it's part of, Rennie doesn't know about this yet. The state of Vermont is having a maintenance facility constructed, and it's coming in way under the price that we're having our police station. I have found out through the back door that these people have designed a police station, a metal police station, with really high efficiency in it, and they did a one for Colchester.
Who is it?
Nigley and Chase.
Maybe Chase, yeah.
Okay, and so, it might behoove us to talk to them, to see what see if they'll share those plans with us.
I think Red Loaf did Colchester's expansion, but so
Well, they may have, but the Negley and Chase designed a building
Okay.
for them. Yeah, you're right. Somebody else finally did that, but they renovated a building. They didn't
Right.
they didn't build from new. These people designed a new build station.
Yeah.
And that's what that would be, is our station would be a new build. So, it wouldn't hurt to see, they may have a bunch of budget numbers and already, I don't know what the square footage is, if it's equal to ours, the floor layout, and I'm sure if somebody dropped a dime on them, they would share the prints, with us to.
Is this too late to do that kind of analysis?
I don't think so, because again, we're gonna say a budget not to exceed, right?
Well, true, I mean, if there's a way to save some money, sure.
Yeah, and I think if you know.
yeah, I don't, I think relative to the vote, obviously, Bill, I think we can't, we can't go back and get an estimate from somebody else. I mean, but I don't think that the committee's work is done either,
We still have ways to go. Should I
Go
begin?
for it. Go.
Okay, so the number that, the committee met last week, we talked about principally three things. The amount of the bond, whether we should have a contingency, and whether there should be any additional land. The amount of the bond that we are recommending is $1,850,000. And that $1,850,000 includes all the building and all of the estimate that I think you've had before. That came up to $1,779,530. That was in all of that information that came from Bread Loaf Corporation. We also included a contingency in there. Just to talk about the contingency, the recommended contingency for that project is 10% of the total, which would have been $178,000. We didn't think that we should have a contingency, that we didn't need a contingency of that size, but we did think that we needed to have a contingency fund. And so and it's a roundabout figure, but right now we're looking at a $50,000 contingency fund. And there was discussion about if we ran into something that needed more than $50,000, that was when we would look at the water tower fund, which has been discussed about the possible using that as a contingency. There would be a secondary contingency if we were unfortunate enough to bump into something that we used up to $50,000 in contingency. We also included in there the cost of buying all of the additional land. Not that we would necessarily, the council will have to make this decision as to whether, how much or any of that additional land would be purchased. On the committee, we had a little bit of a debate on that, and some of us thought, at a minimum, I think we all agreed that we should purchase that little pie-shaped, you have that diagram in front of you, that little pie-shaped one that is $5,700 at a minimum for future parking. And if we have, I'll say garage, it's not really a garage, it's a three-sided with a roof. If we wanted to put that up in the future, we would need at a minimum to have that additional space. But there was debate about whether we should get the next piece, which is $9,500. And remember that these total amounts can vary depending on where that line is, because we're really talking about if it's in the back of the property, it's $2 a square foot. So we can adjust how much it costs us by just moving the line a little bit, and it'll cut down on the square foot or add to the square footage. And then there's the one that's the frontage piece, which is at $5 a square foot. So that's an adjustable figure. What we included in the land cost was $21,000. The land actually, if you total it off of this this diagram would come out to a little over $22,000. It really, it's not that exact, as I said. You move the line a little bit, the square footage changes, and so does the dollar figure. We're recommending it this way. There is some flexibility when, depending on what the council decides about the land, and you don't have to decide it now, the additional funds can go into the contingency. Or, depending on how we time this and deal with the project, if we end up coming up under budget because we don't have to use the contingency or we don't buy all of the land, there may be some time before we actually bond the facility. And we may actually be able to work with, by using a bond anticipation note, actually use the actual figures that.
Bond for less than the.
And we
have
may
approval
actually
for.
bond for less than the max. So we view this figure as the maximum that would be spent. It could be less. Hopefully, we don't run into something that requires the use of the contingency and there's $50,000 less. That is, I think, covers most of what we went through. We did have someone from Bread Loaf there, so we were able to ask questions about the estimates and so on and get those questions answered. We do think we need to do an informational publication. Bread Loaf will help us with that because they have done those before for other clients. And we're gonna have to be working on that actually pretty quickly.
We have about 5 weeks or so.
To get that out, but we need to get something out, very similar to actually what the high school is doing, so that people can understand where the funds are going. We did also go through renaming rooms, and having the rooms with titles that people will understand what the room function is. There were some abbreviations and so on that the layman would look at it and not know what that means. So we clarified all of those. I think that is all I need to go through unless you have questions. Committee members, did I cover everything?
You said you were gonna mention, you were gonna see if you get, was $1,500 to get the,
Well, we're gonna move forward
Okay.
with this phase 1 environmental study, and we need to do that anyway.
okay.
Right,
So that'll be already paid for.
correct.
So do we make a motion to accept this?
Well, I can make that motion. Actually, I will make that motion that we put in.
Ready makes a motion that
We
we
put into.
bond for 1,800.
No,
1 million.
1,800,000.
I was
I wish it was.
1,850,000
I'll second it.
for the police station. We have a motion, or a second. Open up for discussion.
Question, what's the status of that, was it liens that are on the property?
Well, they still exist, and it doesn't matter it doesn't really matter to us because, well, actually because we've budgeted $240,000 now, so it does matter to us, is that if those 2 liens get extinguished, then the purchase price is $229.
229, right.
Which again, this number's fat, we don't spend that.
I think the numbers make sense. I mean, it's probably wise to have a contingency. If we don't use it, that's great. And I think it makes sense to probably purchase that land now while we're here.
And I'm glad to hear some flexibility on it. If we don't need it all, we don't have to, there's some flexibility there.
Yeah, I think that we, obviously I drew this thing, and I think sometimes, and it's my fault for drawing it this way, and people thinking that you had to make decisions about the triangles, and that's really not the case. All right, we have the agreement that we have with Vermont Industrial Parks is any of the frontage is $5 a square foot, anything behind is $2 a square foot, and it can be anything anything you want. And so, as Rennie mentioned, the committee talked about, a potential outbuilding. And, that's a step that's a decision that, may need to be made at some point. Relative to the front triangle, and one of the things that, if this is the warning that's gonna go out there, one of the first things that I'm gonna be doing is getting this site plan in front of the Development Review Board, because I think the Development Review Board can give some advice about parking. And for instance, it's possible that the DRB would prefer to see the city purchase that triangle to the right, so that the visitor parking is right up there to the right-hand side of the building. But again, these decisions don't need to be made. They're actually premature. I mean, sure, if you want to just buy it, you can just buy it, but it really, from a, do we have to buy it? We really aren't at that point, at this point. I think it's good that Vermont Industrial Parks, that the Carrera folks have allowed us that flexibility. It helps us.
It may be wise, it could be wise to hold right off till the end and tell your building's built, and then see what you got left over.
Yeah.
I realize that over the last 6 weeks, and actually before that, the council has spent a lot of time discussing the actual plan and what it would look like. I haven't been here because I've been ill, so I kind of, and I forfeited my opportunity, basically to really bring my concerns before the council. But I would simply like to just kind of put on the record where I'm sitting on this, because I've heard from a lot of people with regard to the size of the building and concern over it being excessive for Vergennes. And if I were simply voting the way the people that have talked to me wanted me to vote, let's say, I would be voting against putting this amount of money in front of the voters. But because the issue is really, it's up to the voters to decide how they want it, and if they want to spend that amount of money, and if the voters want a building of that size, then it should be up to them and not me voting yes or no on that. But I wanted to put that out there. And I just, I don't know whether it was fortuitously or not, but there was an article in this morning's Free Press about the Heinsberg Police Station. Heinsberg has something in the vicinity of, 3,000 registered voters. We have something in the vicinity of 1,600.
Registered voters?
Registered voters, just, okay, as a measure of the two communities. Heinsberg has 6 full-time officers and 3 part-time people. The building which they are proposing to their voters is in the vicinity of $1 million. It's 3,500 square feet instead of almost 6,000 square feet. And that just raised in my mind that issue. I don't want to waste the council's time by going back and re-looking at the size of this, because I think that time has passed. But I wanted to get those thoughts, my thoughts on the record, because I have not had a chance to.
There are some other factors there of availability to other resources nearby that they may not have the needs that Vergennes may be looking for. So there's some pros and cons both ways.
Yeah. So, anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
No, by all means. Any other comments?
Well, I just
We have
follow
a
up
motion.
on that. I did see that article, and of course, I knew we were having a meeting tonight, and I was absolutely sure somebody would bring that up. But it's really hard to compare. I mean, we don't know what's put into that 3,500 square feet and why. And all police stations are not alike, and there are different needs for different communities. So, although I think what I'll do is look into it and see, what they have and why. But I don't necessarily think that we can make a comparison between their building and ours.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion?
No.
If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Now we have to talk about the rest of the warrants. Is there any other issues that we have to discuss, or do we want to warn it as printed?
I move we warn it as printed.
Second.
We have a motion, warn it as printed. Second, that Randy made the motion, Randy made the second. Any discussion, questions? None? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There's your warrants. Joan?
I do need, here's the original, I do need it to be passed and everyone has to sign it.
Yep, okay. All right, okay, yep, sorry about that. Now, Joan, I need it in a Word document
Yeah,
so I can do my stuff for
Yep.
my slide presentation, my PowerPoint, please.
and just send it to you?
Send it via email, yep, and then I'll cut and paste it in page by warning. And I also need, contact information for each of the agencies. I will be contacting them again this year, asking each agency that has applied for funding to come and have a person read and speak if questions are asked. I will also set up, like I have in the past, for you new guys, what I do is I give a certain number of articles to each person to read should a person not show up. So I give you a little script, should you need to have one. I lay it out on the way we sit on the table. Okay, so that'll all be addressed, and I will I forget whether I handed them out last time. I think I handed them out, but if you want them in ahead of time, I can I'll email them to you so that you see what your script is. And I will also.
Down again when I'm not there.
That's all right, we have.
I think I read yours, Bill.
We have a fallback, we have a fallback plan.
Thanks for the little, no pun intended, right?
Yeah, yes, no, fallback plan. Yes, okay, great. Moving along, this really doesn't, I don't think we have to have a motion on the mileage. We do require signatures.
Write small.
Write very small because we gotta put everybody's name in here, so I'll sign.
I don't have a small name, but I'll try to get it fitted in.
Just right, Joe.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the issue on the 2013 certificate of mileage, highway mileage. And if you have any questions, you gotta ask Mel.
Do this so that we get our.
14.96 miles.
That's right. I frankly don't know why, there's a law that ought to be changed, is that you shouldn't have to do that unless you make a change. You know, every 241 select boards are meeting and signing something with no additional roads, but. I
You can
guess
go to check here, right?
But actually, what it actually is used for is that it's used to calculate our mileage aid check.
Okay,
For $58,000, we'll sign it.
we gotta have a motion on the pork squid?
We don't have to have a motion.
Okay.
You'd have to sign it.
I have the liquor license, and if you approve, you will sign on the left side. If you disapprove, you will sign on the right side. And I'm signing on the approved side so that you know which side is the approved side.
Can I just make one?
You may, go for it.
Is that two signatures for
I know this is a form that is with the liquor commission or whatever, but it's a public document, and if somebody comes to the city and asks for it, I assume that we redact the social security numbers off of this.
We don't even keep
You don't
that
keep it?
on file.
Oh,
That
okay.
goes to liquor
Okay,
control
'cause-
and they issue us just the license, and that's the part
Oh,
that
okay,
we keep.
okay, then,
I didn't
that's not a
even-
problem, because I just was concerned when I looked at the names of the principals and the social security numbers were there, that's all.
If we're being sent things out like that, in the future, if there's a social security number on it, and any copies that go to the councils, the social security numbers should be lined through. We shouldn't see that.
Well, what happens is liquor control emails them to us. We
Yeah.
print them off, we mail them to the liquor license holder. They have to fill everything out, they have to bring it back to us. It has to go back to the council for approval.
Yeah, I know, but the
You said that
copies that
I
ends in
made,
the
I made
council
copies of all
packet-
that, Joan, for the city council member. I did that.
Oh,
I think
okay.
I did.
Okay.
Anything that
copied
comes to the city council, it shouldn't have any personal information, social security numbers on it.
Okay, I see what
We
you're
shouldn't,
saying.
because.
Yeah, I copied it,
Yeah,
Joan.
not a problem. Just please and thank you. So that's taken care of.
The only things left is just.
Mel, you're gonna take care of number D, Encore
Well,
redevelopment?
What I would like
What would you
is,
need?
what I would
You want a
like
motion?
is authorization from the city council for me to sign this on behalf of the city, so that we can proceed with this. Let me tell you that,
We can make this short and sweet.
I'll try. Let me just tell you,
All those in favor?
I've met with, I had a meeting with Kathy Cannon, Bob, this was after our last meeting. I've lost track of when I met with them. When I met with you, had I not met with?
You told me to go
Okay.
now. You were
So I
gonna-
met on Wednesday with them, that's what I did, maybe it was the next day. So I had a meeting with Kathy Cannon, a business manager for the superintendent's office, Carl Cole, Bob McNary, Chad Farrell, and another gentleman with Encore, to get a better understanding of the Ferrisburg project, because it appeared to me that it did have benefits to the high school, and Vergennes, like Ferrisburg, Addison, Waltham, and Panton. If there's a way for the high school to save some money, we can benefit from that. So that was part of the reason for the meeting. The other part of the reason was for the meeting is about whether or not the city of Vergennes could take full advantage of a solar array of similar size to that discussed in Ferrisburg, because of the kilowatts that we use primarily at our wastewater treatment plant. But, we spend $8,000 or $9,000 a month in electric bills. With all of our bills. So for the city to receive the most benefit out of this program would be for there to be a 3 to 3.5 acre site that would host a 500 kilowatt facility, which generates 750,000 kilowatts a year. And I did I did communicate with a number of property owners in Vergennes. First off, I looked at the city's property, the land we own in the Haven Road, the land that we own up at McIntosh Park, land around the sewer plant, and the city does not own a piece of land that, based on the opinion of Chad Farrell, could be developed for this facility and get a 248 permit. For instance, the idea of stripping 3 acres of woods to build a solar array is probably not going to be looked upon favorably to the Public Service Board, all right? So you really need like a pre-existing open field. So the city doesn't own anything. We looked at other sites around the city, and the only site that is a possibility that I did not pursue was any land owned by the state of Vermont. So that is that could be a possibility. I will tell you that I have.
You gotta be close to three-phase power.
It would have to be very near the wind. It would have to be very near the wind turbine, and I mean, obviously the wind turbine got approved. But as you know, Mike, long-term land deals, with the state of Vermont can take a long time.
That Northland Job Corps one,
Yeah.
that's close to being finished.
Oh, good.
So if you want some information, you wanna call
Okay.
Bill. Sorry about that, I had to get that.
So the point is that remembering that there's really kind of two benefits here. The owner of the land can receive $10,000 a year in annual lease payments. The user of the electricity, has the potential of receiving, in essence,
2.6 cents per kilowatt discount on their bill, all right? So if you have, if you have a facility that's using 400,000 kilowatts, then you multiply that times the 2.6 cents, and that's your potential credit. If it's 600,000, you just keep doing the math. So if we don't have a piece of land, the only benefit that we can have is to get the solar credits. And Encore is looking at a piece of land in Ferrisburg that we, in essence, could be tied to, all right? And frankly, as long as the piece of land is within the Green Mountain Power Service District, it doesn't matter to us, because it's not like the sewer plant would get its electricity from the solar array. It doesn't work that way. The solar array generates electricity and it goes into the grid, and we, the city, becomes the guarantor, if you will, basically guaranteeing that we will purchase power and thereby use these credits, all right? So to me, I really see us forever being in the sewer business and pumping sewer and using electricity. And so to me, I think it's if we had 700,000 kilowatts of usage with all of our bills, and we may, it's very close. If we don't, it's possible that we could team up with the Vergennes Elementary School, but we may have enough electricity on our own to use up, to get full benefit of the 700,000. So if you multiply the 700,000 times 2.6 cents, you did the math, Bill, right? You did, it's something.
I'm waiting for you to do it.
Yeah, $17,000 a year. So anyway, what I'd like to do, what I'm looking for is authorization to sign this so that Chad can pursue securing a site, and obviously the development of that site requires capital, provides capital to be invested. So in essence, we would be signing into being the guarantors that we're going to use the amount of electricity generated from the array.
I got a question. What was wrong with the New Haven Road site,
Wooded.
It's wooded.
even though that's all scrubbed?
I have another spot that I can tell you
It's
about in a
wetland,
minute.
too.
It's not our spot.
Right across from us, right across the river.
Yeah.
That meadow.
Yeah,
That's
Who
State of
owns
Vermont.
that?
State of Vermont.
We do.
Yeah,
I mean, or they do.
yeah.
That's a good spot.
That's a good site, yeah.
Very good spot.
Well, the
Okay.
city wouldn't be involved with it's not our lease, it's separated, The Ferrisburg thing is a little different, because Ferrisburg has the land, but the primary user of electricity is the high school, the Ferrisburg Central School, the Ferrisburg Town Clerk's Office, the Ferrisburg town garage, those are smaller users of electricity. The primary users are Ferrisburg Central and the high school.
So these savings are guaranteed regardless of the market price of power?
They actually grow. The
Savings
savings
grow?
grow, yeah.
Okay, so there's no risk if with natural gas or some other source of electricity that all of a sudden, if the rates that we pay go down, we're still gonna accrue this 17,000 in savings for 20 years
And more.
and more.
Because the delta, if the rates go up, the delta goes up.
But if the rates go down,
I'd ask for a motion to approve,
Makes sense.
letter of intent, authorized Mel.
Makes
I'm a
sense.
little hesitant. I just don't know enough about it, I guess. I mean, you're talking about you've got an option to purchase after 10 years. We know nothing about that.
Well, first off, the purchase, I realize that that's in there, Bill, but we're not, we aren't hosting the array. We're not buying the array.
Okay.
All right, the 10-year deals with purchasing the solar array. We're not buying
Is
that.
that the landowner's option?
That's correct.
So
It's
if it was
not
on
a-
Bob McNary's site, he could consider buying it.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're,
Just in essence, what this is, the people putting up the solar panel have to have somebody who will
take the power.
buy the power.
In essence,
In
that's
essence.
correct.
So
right.
if-
It's kind of weird because, let's say at the
Green
sewer,
belt.
let's take, at the sewer plant, let's say that we're paying 18 cents a kilowatt for electricity.
Yeah.
We are going to continue to pay 15 cents per kilowatt, all
Right.
right? However, there'll be the amount of electricity generated by this facility will produce there's two other numbers, all right? There's the 18 cent and the 20.6 cents, and that delta, because the wholesale value is 14.6, and then you add the 6-cent solar adder, which is 20.6. Now, some of the money has got to be used to pay for this facility, and that's why where the 18 cents comes in. So we, in essence, will be paying, we pay 15, we actually pay 18, but get 20.6 back. And then the delta between the 80 and the 20.6 is in the form of a credit against our bill that we paid at 15.
Okay.
All right, so I mean, it's
Did you get that?
it's a little strange.
Only because I had talked with, this is similar to an individual who purchases, puts up the things for their house.
Shannon, is it similar?
Very similar.
Yeah, Shannon has a system.
Yeah, and there's other people putting them in. There's 100 days or something. They still, they're trying to, there's a lot more going on.
The other thing that, just so that you know, that we looked at is, let's say that we can't get tied into a 500 kilowatt facility. There is room for a 149 kW facility at the wastewater treatment plant. And if we put that facility there, the city would end up getting 10% of the electricity, or a 10% discount off the bill. And so it ends up equaling $4,100 a year. That's what this benefit would be to us, which is okay, all right? But I'd rather have I'd rather have 16,000 tied into a facility somewhere else within Green Mountain Power's jurisdiction.
These aren't the people that I sent to you, right? Because there's that other outfit that will come do the same thing. That other email, those other emails I sent you.
I know what you're talking about, Mike, and there's obviously, this is, any company, there are companies that can become involved with these. Encore, it's a Vermont company, they have capital already in place, all right, that, and can successfully make these things happen. It's not to say somebody else
And
couldn't.
the other outfit that I sent you actually wanna take in, if you have a building, like a rooftop, that you wanna put some stuff on, they'll help you do the same thing, kinda like the homeowner, so it's all win-win.
I make the motion.
The site owner, let's say Ferrisburg, Bob has a site.
Well, we shouldn't be discussing it with that.
They have to go through all the
No, we
permitting in Ferrisburg, through him, through the PSB or
Well,
whatever they have to
just
do.
a 500, anything over 149 KW needs to get a 248 permit. They get a certificate of public good through the Public Service Board. Anything under 150, it doesn't go through that same process. So, it takes a while, it will take a little while for that other site to be developed. But I just, I can tell you that Encore, I mean, if their preference really would be to do 149 KW and move on to the next project, all right? I guess I'm greedy, I mean, I'd rather get, if I can get 2.6 cent credit on all of the city's electric bills, up to 700,000 kilowatts.
We're
that's
running way over here, people. Let's either make a motion and get it off the table, or
Is time of the essence,
or table it, one or the
given the
other.
circumstances?
Well, first off, this is a letter of intent, all right? It's not the final deal. So I don't think that this here, it really is a letter of intent for them to be able to proceed, and there's something else that would come back to us. All right, because one of the things, just so that you know, the 18 cents
let's say that some other site is further away from three-phase power, all right? That can make that 18 cents move, and therefore your delta will move. So it allows them to proceed with, you know, with the development, with the potential development of a site. So this would come back to you.
Okay.
I make the motion that we give Mel permission to sign the letter of intent with Encore.
Have a second?
Second.
I guess Peter get it out first.
Motion, didn't we?
Oh, we did.
No, we started with a motion, but nobody seconded it.
Oh, God, wasn't it?
So, and we should have had the motion to open it up for discussion, but that's all right, too. A motion to second. Any other further discussion about the letter of intent? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Be quiet. We want to go home. Just so that everybody knows, each year they pick an individual to dedicate the fire school. Not sure what town it's being held in, but this year, Vergennes Fire Chief was honored, and it's going to be dedicated to Jim Brewer. So that is a real honor. Again, a reminder to everybody, VUHS informational meeting this Thursday if you want a tour, you'll be there at 6. And a big reminder for everybody next Tuesday, February 5th, to get out and vote. Vote your choice. Randy?
I make the motion that we adjourn.
Who wants to second it?
Second.
Ziggy seconds it. All those in favor? Opposed? So carried.